Okay, everyone, let's start. So, May June 2023, paper 2-2. We'll start with the first question, and this requires us to use insert document. So, I'll open that as well. This is always provided to you in the exam. Okay, so, alright, first question we have here is refer to the insert for the list of pseudocode functions and operators. And then we have to, they're saying that there is a postal code of this value, and then we have to find a more appropriate way of representing the postal costs. Okay, so the cost is set to 3.75. So this is going to be a constant, right? So whenever you have constant values, you don't write them directly. A more appropriate answer is to just store them in constants by storing value in a constant. And the advantage is that you only have to define it once, and then you can change the value whenever needed, or you can, it simplifies the logic as well because you give it a name. So describe the advantages. So we can just quickly write that we can make the logic easier to understand, like I just said, and then we can talk about how we can just enter the value of postal cost once in the constant, and then we can update it accordingly. And then we can also talk about that it avoids mistyping the values of postal cost. Okay, so since we're saving it in a variable, so we would know how that we have to use the constant name. So there are more chances of mistyping 3.75 than mistyping item postal cost. I'm skipping these. Okay, so theoretical questions we're skipping. Then question 2, a program stores a user's date of birth, and then they're asking that we have to use insert documents to assign a value to myDOB. Okay, so whenever we have the date function, so date function the thing you have to remember is that you cannot just directly create a date by using the assignment operator. You have to use the set date function. Okay, set date function, what does it do? It will take the day, the month, and the year, and then it will return you a date. So it has to be done using a function. This is the only data type that requires a function to be done. So we'll write my DOB gets assigned set date 17/11/2007. So we get 1 mark for this. Then myDOB has been assigned a valid value representing the user's date of birth. Write a pseudocode statement to calculate the number of months. So number of months from the month of the user's birth until the end of the year, and assign this to the variable num months. Example, myDOB contains a value representing this. The value of 5 would be assigned to number of months. Okay. So we have to calculate the total number of months. All right. So whatever the month of birth is, first we need to extract that. And in order to do that, we have this month function here. We pass in a date, and it will return us the month number. So I'll write month, and I'll wrap this in my DOB. So what will it do? It will return the month from the date of birth. Then they're saying from this you have to count how many number of months are there till the end of the year. So there are 12 months in a year, so we subtract it from 12. And then they're saying you need to store this in the variable num months. So I'll do num months arrow like this. Okay, so then the next part, this should be num months. Okay, then the next part is part C. So this is, now they're again asking for description now. Okay, whenever there's a description question, you are not allowed to use pseudocode. In fact, it's written here as well. And if it is not written, then you still are not allowed to use pseudocode. You have to write in English. So they're saying the program will output the day of the week corresponding to my DOB. Given the date, the program will output Thursday. Okay, an algorithm is required. An array will be used to store the names of the days of the week. Okay, for this is the most important function we have. It's called day index. So day index, what will it do? It if you pass in a date to it, it will return you a specific integer, and then that integer has a mapping. So Sunday, or if it returns 1 is a Sunday, 2 is a Monday, 3 is a Tuesday, so on and so forth, right? So if you pass in any date, it will return you an integer, and then that will tell you whatever the day is. So this has to be mapped individually. And now in the question, they're saying that we are supposed to use an array for the days of the week. So what we'll do is we'll essentially create an array like this. We'll have Sunday, then we'll have Monday, then we'll have Tuesday, and then they'll all be stored at different indices. So this would we have index 1, index 2, index 3. So whatever the day index returns, we'll just go to that index and we'll pick that specific value, and then we'll move ahead with it. So we have to write these steps just in form of English now. So first of all, they're saying that we have to create the array definition. So array definition would be creating an array of type string with 7 values, because there are 7 days in a week. So we write that we will create or we can declare a 1D array of 7 values with type string. So we get 1 mark for this. And then they're asking for the steps to be written. So like we discussed, we need to assign Monday, Sunday, Tuesday to each index. So we have to write that manually. So I'll write that we have to assign the day name into each index. And the example would be that we can start from Sunday at index 1, Tuesday or Monday at index 2, all the way till index 7, like this. Then in the second part, we have to use the day index. Okay, so in order to get the current index from the week, so we'll write that. So we have to apply the function of day index in order to get the day number. Okay, they're saying that it will be saved in my DOP. To get the day number stored in my DOP, right? So whatever the day number here is, let's say since it outputs Thursday, that means that the day index would return you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It would have returned you 5. For Thursday, it would be 5. So we get 5 here, and then we go to index 5 of our array, which is, so we'll have index 4, and then we'll have index 5 and index 6. So we'll go to index 5 of our array, and that would be Thursday. So we'll just return that. So in the third step, what you have to do is we have to get the return value, access the day name at the array index value, or at the array index which was returned by the day index function. Okay, so whatever value day index returns, we go to that index. So if the day was if the day was 4, we'll go to Wednesday, and that's it. And then they're saying that we have to actually store the names of the days of the week, and then we have to output the day as well. So in the last step, we have to just output the name. Output day name from the array. And as always, I'll open the examiner report here as well, so we can see what were the common mistakes. Okay, here we go. So we are doing paper 2-2, and this was question number 2, part C. So we'll quickly look at it. So 2 part C, a small number of very good answers were seen, giving steps that would have been easily mapped to a program. Many answers failed to give a viable description of the required steps. So giving a textbook definition of an array rather than identifying the attributes, suggesting that an array could be called instead, or that would return a value. So these are the features of a module or a function procedure. Using imprecise phrases such as search for, find, lookup, etc. The use of return rather than output. Okay, so very common mistakes. This is always the case whenever there is an explanation question and where they do not ask you to write the pseudocode for it. Okay, so then there's the question, how is yellow and yellow and orange added to the queue shown in the diagram? So this is a basic ADT question. The ADT pseudocode is not included at ACE, so we'll always get the explanation questions. Okay, so we have an AIT implementation of queue. Each item is stored in a separate location in the data structure. During initial design, the queue is limited to holding a maximum of 10 items. Then we have the front of the queue, which points to the next item to be removed. So it will always point to the value that you have to remove, and end of queue points to the last data item added, and it will point to the last item that we added. The queue is circular. That means there would be wrapping around, which means that after you're done with index 9, and if there's still space, so we'll go all the way back to index 0, and then we so on and so forth. So we have to write how the values would get added. Okay, how orange and yellow are added to the queue. So we have to use all the details given to us. First of all, whenever we get a question like this, we always have to check if the queue is full or not, and we can clearly see it's not full, right? Okay, so what do we have to do here? First of all, we have to make a check if the queue is full. So we have to evaluate if
Won't
the
we increment first and then check if you need to wrap around?
sorry, you, can you repeat? I mean,
I'm saying, won't we increment first and then check if you need to wrap around?
yes, yes, that is true.
Okay.
Yeah, so evaluate if the queue is full. So if it is full, then we obviously not going to do anything. So instead we can just write evaluate if the queue is, if the queue has space available. Okay, if that is the case, then in the second part, we are, so since we are going to add the value, so the value would be added at the end of the queue. So we are going to add the value at 8th index, but since there is a value at 8th index, we'll move the end of queue first to 9. So we'll increment the end of queue pointer to point to index 9.
So
Once
won't
the
we I was saying, won't we increment first and then check if
No, first we store the value, and since we can actually store the value here, then we save the value. फिर जब आप दोबारा से increment करोगे, then it would go to, it would become more than index 9, and then we'll wrap around once it becomes more than index 9. Because right now the end of queue pointer is pointing to the current value that was saved. So अभी यहाँ पे we can save a value, right? Here we'll end up saving orange. Make sense? And then we'll wrap around. Okay, so then we will
no
store.
space is available.
Your voice is lagging.
I was saying first we check if there's space and then we increment.
In this case, we are already pointing to the last value that we stored, right? So it's not pointing to the next available space, it's pointing to the last value that we stored. So first so in this case, first we do increment by 1, then we store the value. And then once we have to add the value again, then we'll check if we have exceeded the boundary of the queue, and only then we'll wrap around. So once the index becomes greater than 9, then we'll wrap around and go to 0, because we can still store a value at the index 9.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll increment the end of the queue pointer, and then we will store the value orange at the current index stored in end of queue pointer. Okay, once that is done, then we have to do the same thing for yellow. Now after index 9, since there is enough space available, the end of queue pointer will wrap around and go to 0. So we'll write end of queue pointer will wrap around and will now store index 0, and then we'll store the value yellow at the index stored in end of queue point, which would be index 0. So yellow would actually get stored here. You don't have to write it on the question, and this is just for visualization. Then the question is saying the following diagram shows the state of the queue after several operations have been performed. All the queue operations have been used at least once. State the number of queues, the item in the queue. Okay. So if you start counting between from the front to the end, okay. So from the front we remove the values. So this is from where we delete the values, and end is where we add the values. So we'll start. This would be 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5. From here we wrap around the queue, and then 6, and then 7. So here we end the queue. So there would be a total of 7.
Sir,
Yes.
you were lagging. आपने खत्म भी करा दिया वो कुछ समझ नहीं आया. You were lagging बहुत ज़्यादा.
Okay. I think internet का issue है. Just a second. Bebo hotspot देना. Part B. So in part B they're saying that we again do not have to use pseudocode in our answer. We have to write description again. The design of the queue is completed and the number of location is increased. The function add to queue has been written. It takes a string as a parameter and adds this to the queue. The function will return true if the string was added. The file to queue will add each line from the file to the queue. This procedure will end when all the lines have been added or when the queue is full. Describe the algorithm. Okay, again this is kind of a tricky question. So whenever we get these explanation questions, they are usually a bit challenging. So a small number of very good answers were seen, right? Otherwise students fail to give a viable description. So we have to be very careful when we're doing this. We'll just be converting the pseudocode statements in English here. Whatever you write in pseudocode, you just write in English. So first of all, what you have to do is we have to open the file. So since they're talking about a text file, we have to open the file, we have to close the file and all of that stuff. So what are the steps in this case? So we have some file. In fact, let's make the file here. Let's say there's a file here, and then let's say there's some data. So let's say we have CS, we have physics, we have maths. So what we have to do is we have to pick this data and we have to add this in the queue one by one. So let's say we have CS here, so maybe CS goes here, then we have math goes here, then we have physics goes here, so on and so forth. So this is what you have to do. You have to add the values from the file to the queue. So first of all, we have to open the file. So we are not going to write pseudocode, so we will say open the text file in read mode. Then we have to read all the lines in the file, so we will loop until end of file is reached, like this. Then we will talk about how we will actually read one line at a time, and then the question says the function will return true if the string was added successfully. So first of all, what we'll do is that we'll try to read a line and then we'll pass it to the add to queue. If it returns a true, then that is fine. If it returns a false, then we stop. So loop until end of file is reached, and then we need to use another loop. Inside the loop, until the end of file is reached, we need to stop looping as soon as the space is full. So we'll say we'll have a nested loop to loop until add to queue returns false.
Can't we just use a single loop and say that we have to loop until the end of file or the add to queue is false?
Yes, that is also fine. You can do that. So loop until end of file is reached, or until add to queue returns false. Okay, this also works perfectly fine. Okay. Then in the next part,
sir, what do you mean until add to queue returns false?
The question here says that add to queue is a function that is going to add your string that has been read from the file into the queue. So if the line was added to the queue.
Okay. Never mind. I get it.
Yeah, it will return true, otherwise it will return false if the line was not added. So it will return false. Okay, so meanwhile in the loop, now inside the loop, what we'll do is we will read the line from the text file, So once we read the line, then the next part is that we will pass this line as a parameter to add to queue, like this. So if we do the pseudocode here, it would look something like this. So we have some loop here, while not end of file of, let's say, the file name f, and then inside it we're also checking while not end of file and while add to queue, some line does not return false. As long as that is the case, so inside this we will read the line. So we'll say read file f comma line, and then we are just going to add to queue this line, and then yeah, that's the whole point. And this will return some value, maybe response, so you can store the response here, and then you'd need to call it outside the loop as well. So this will keep on repeating until it becomes either false or we reach the end of the file. But we don't have to write this is purely for explanation. Okay, so yeah, going on, then we have a get number function. Okay, this is a very easy question. Get number function. So this was a bit theory heavy paper, as you've seen by now. So first 3 questions, very little pseudocode writing and mostly theoretical, and for this reason, to balance it out, the remaining pseudocode questions are actually not too tough, just a little bit of understanding is required in those. So get num takes 2 parameters, a string and a character, and you have to count the number of times that the character occurs in the string. And for any comparisons, the characters need to be case sensitive. For example, A and uppercase A are not identical. Okay, so this is very straightforward question. This is question number 4. So what we have to do is we have to go through all the values in the string. So function get num, then they're saying there would be 2 parameters, a string and a character. So this would be, let's call it source string, and then there would be some character, let's call it ch. You can call it anything you want, and then this will return an integer because we have to return a count. And whenever there is a function, there has to be some sort of a return value. Okay, so we have to count how many times the character occurs in the string. So we have to use a simple for loop. So for I 1 to length of the source string, and then we have next I. So depending on the number of characters we have, so let's actually do it using an example. We don't have to actually call anything, but this is purely for testing purposes. So when I call get num, and let's say the string I pass in is maybe football, and we have to count how many times O appears in it. So it would be twice. And then let's say if I put in A here, so it would return me only once. So what I have to do is I have to separate out all the characters in this string one by one, and then I need to count how many times does this character appear in the string. So how do I separate out the characters in the string? For this I have to use the mid function, which is again given in the insert document, which will check the current source, and then we give it the starting position, the starting index, and then the number of characters that we want to return from the string. So if we have the string, we start from index 2, so that would be index 2 A, B, and then 3 characters from B, so that would be B, C, D. It returns B, C, D. So we'll write that. So we'll get 1 character at a time. So character, let's call it letter maybe. So the letter would be equal to mid of the source string, starting from I and getting 1 character at a time. So this will get 1 letter at a time from the source, and this I here will keep on changing. It will be 1, then it will be 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So it will change with the loop variable. So it will get you 1 character every time. Then you simply have to compare it with the character that we're looking for. So if letter is equal to the character, then that means, let's say this is the letter that we're looking for, character, which is A. So when we have football here, so the first character is F. So we are checking is f equal to a. It's not the case, then we search if o is equal to a. Then we are searching if o is equal to a, then t, then b, then a. Since they match, so what we have to do in that case, we have to increment the count by 1. Count is equal to count by 1, and then we do end if, and that's it. And we simply return the value of the count. Now we have to do declarations and initializations. So we'll write declare, so letter would be a character, then declare count will be an integer, and count will be set to 0 initially. So the only important part here was this one, that how do we extract one character at a time, and for that we have to use the min function. So with this, we are done with question 4. It will return a count, and then you can catch the count in this response variable in this function call, and you can also take input from the user here. Okay, so moving on to the next question, that is going to be question number 5. Okay, question number 5 is again a theoretical question, so I'll just do the first part. The remaining part is theoretical. Okay, there is a program and it's going to output the square root of the numbers from 1 to 10. The pseudocode is correctly converted into program code. Function square root is a library function and contains no errors. The program code compiles without errors, but the program gives unexpected results. These are caused by design and explain why the program gives the unexpected results. Okay, let's see. So we have some. So this is the procedure that we've written here. Okay, it's using byref. Okay, then we are outputting this number. Then we are using the square root function. So square root function is calculating the square root, and then the output of this num. Okay, and then num is set here. We are calling it multiple times, and we are adding 1.0 in it. Okay, so there is a design error here. So everything else is fine, but the only issue here is this byref. So what does byref do? If we look at the definition in byref, what happens is that it modifies, it passes the reference of the parameter, which means that any changes made to variable in the parameter will be shown in subsequent parts of the program. Now what does it mean? It simply means that any change that you do on this num inside any module, they would be reflected outside this function or module as well. So if you're using byref this num, wherever you use this num again, it would be updated. So since we are passing in num here and we are passing it by ref, so any updates that we do inside the module here, like we are finding the square root of it, we are updating it, and then we are outputting it. So byref would be the issue here. So now what happens here? It should have been passed by value. When we pass it by value, so we just pass in the copy of the value. We do not actually modify the original variable. So the issue here would be that whenever we are updating the value here in the num and we are changing it here by 1 as well, so it will keep on changing the value throughout. So every time the value will change throughout the program, and then it would cause the design issue, because we don't want that to happen, that the value of this num is affected throughout the program. So it should have been by val, not by ref. We only use byref in cases of like arrays where we want the arrays to actually update throughout, but in this case it would not be the right option. So the correct answer would be that we need to pass num as by val, not by ref, and the reason is that any changes made to num, it is this num in display, to made to this num inside the module will update the actual value will or we can say inside the module will also update the value of num, which will affect the subsequent parts of the program. So that's what you have to write here. So if you look at the exam report for this is again very theory heavy paper. So a small number of candidates gave a clear description. Candidates need to recognize that so simply referring to by ref without explanation would not gain full marks. And then comparing a variable of type real with an integer value or referring to a procedure before it is declared. So they're saying that these were the errors. So we just had to mention that by ref was used and then it would keep on updating the value throughout. Skipping these questions, these are very simple software development questions. Alright, moving to the next part. This is one of my favorite questions. It's fairly simple but also tricky at the same time. So we simply have to write a procedure square that will end up drawing this whole design, this pattern. So in this we just have to figure out what the pattern exactly is. So if we look at the number of lines, so whatever we input, so the value that we input is equal to the number of lines, right? So if I input 3, there are 3 number of lines. If I input 4, there are 4 lines. If I input 9, there are 9 lines. Then we can clearly see that some lines have the same number and then some lines have the stars. Now you have to check how many lines will have the stars, and we can clearly see that when we have 3, so 3 minus 2 is equal to 1 star. Then when we have 4, so 4 minus 2 is equal to 2 stars. Then we have 9 minus 2, which is getting us 7 stars. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this would be the number of stars. So if we generalize this, it would simply be that the number of line minus 2 or number of lines minus 2 is equal to the star count. This is how many stars we'll have. And then the last process here left is how many lines will actually have that will have all the numbers, and that is the starting line and the ending line. So start and end line will have all numbers. And then the remaining number of lines, which is again minus 2. So let's say if they are 9, the value is 9. So 7 lines will have the number and then they will have 7 stars. Similarly, if we have 4, so 4 minus 2, 2 lines will have 4 followed by asterisk and then followed by 4. So the simplest way to do this is by just creating the first line and the last line. First of all, this is the simplest part that we can do. So let's go ahead and try this for question number 6. Okay, so the procedure is called square. Yes, this procedure is called square, and then we are passing in some parameter. Let's call it value, maybe it would be an integer, and then we have to do end procedure. Okay, with this done, we have to start writing. So what we have to do is, in order to create a string like this where there are multiple characters in the same line, and they've also given the hint that whenever you have to use output will always take you to the next line. So if you have to print in the same line, we have to concatenate it in the empty string, and in order to concatenate we use the ampersand operator, this one, right? So we have to use this. So let's quickly look at it. So it simply means, let's say if I have a string, let's call it main line, maybe that is the last line and the end line. So I'll leave it empty initially, and then I run a loop for I 1 2. So we have value number of characters, right? So if we input 9, then there would be 9 9s. So I'll run the loop till value, then I do next I, and every time what I have to do is I'll say mainline is equal to mainline ampersand, and here we have to join it with the current value. But so it would look something like this. What it'll do is it will run the loop 9 times, and then every time it will keep adding 9 9 9 9 in the same line. So this is how mainline would look like. Okay, so we were doing question 6. So we have 9 9s here like this, and we were printing them all using the ampersand operator, right? First the string would be empty, and then we'll keep on concatenating or adding 9, and this will be done for a total of 9 times. The only issue here is that this has to be replaced by a value, and value is an integer, so we need to convert this into a string. So for that we use num to string. And how do I know this? It's given in the insert document. So if we go there quickly, and if we look at num to string, so this will take a data type of a number or a real, and it will return you a string value. So then we can concatenate the strings together. Okay, so this will end up creating the main line, which means we'll output main line here, first main line maybe, and then output last main line. So it will look something like this: output main line here once, and then output main line here once. So let's say if the value we sent was, again this is for testing purposes, so if the value we sent in was 4, that would mean it would look something like this: 4 4 4 4. This would be the starting line, and then this would be the ending line, just like the question said. Now we have to just figure out a way to print the values in between. Okay, we know how many times we have to print these lines. That would be the start number of lines minus 2. So first let's do that. Let's run a loop for the lines in between. Output star lines. So the loop will run from for j 1 to value minus 2, right? Because we again saw the pattern. So if we have the value 9, so there would be 7 lines. If we have 4, then there would be 2 lines. So we have to subtract 2 from here. Then in the start, what we have to do is we have to generate this number of stars, this many number of stars. In case of 9, we have to generate 7 stars. In case of 4, we have to generate 2 stars, etc. So how many times the loop runs will dictate how many stars we are printing. So first let's print the stars, and then we can join the starting and the ending character. So in order to generate this many stars, we again need an empty string. So let's call this star line, and we set it to empty, and then we do star line is equal to star line ampersand, and here we'll put the star. Or you can also define it as a constant. So we can say constant star would be like this. We can define it directly, and we can just use the variable name here, just like we saw in the question before, that it's always a nice practice to actually use a constant instead of using the direct value. Now what would this do? So let's say if the value is 4, this loop will run 2 times, and then it would have joined 2 stars in the line. So star line would look something like this: 2 stars. Now we have 2 stars here. So the next thing we have to do is that we have to actually have the first character and the last character before them, and then we have to print this whole thing value minus 2 times, right? So we have this here. This will get us 1 line, but the 1 line is not complete. We just printed n number of stars. So let's actually print the complete line. So let's say that we have, or let's say generate the star line, and now we'll generate the complete line, which would be that we have the value before the stars, so 4, then 2 stars, and then 4. Similarly 9, then followed by 7 stars, and then 9. So we already have the number of stars ready. We just have to put the character in the start and the character at the end, the number. So we can just store it here somewhere. Let's call it string number or string value, and we are just converting it to num to string, so we don't have to rewrite it over and over again. So this becomes string value. I'll change it here to string value as well, because we have to use it here again. Okay, now I'll generate the complete line. So string value, or let's so this would be star line is equal to, I'm using the same variable, you can create another variable, it's fine. So first we have the string value, then ampersand, then star line, then ampersand, and string value. Okay, now what does this mean? It literally
What
means,
does ampersand do again?
okay, looks like I keep forgetting it every time. So this just joins two strings here.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So it will join 2 strings. Okay, so what has this line done? So we had 4 in string value, then star line had 2 stars, and then 4 in the string value again. Or if we had 5 here, so this would have been 5, then 3 stars, and then 5. And if this had been, let's say 9, so this would have been 9, then 7 stars, and then 9 again. Now the string is ready. The starting string is has been printed. The ending string has been printed. Now we just have to print this star line for the value minus number 2 times, and that's the last step. So output star lines. Okay, so for this again, for let's say z 1 to value minus 2, next z, and then we do output star line. That's it. So what will it do now? Again, just a quick recap, we sent 4 here, so we convert 4 to string, we generate 4 times 4s, and then we print it once. Then we generate the number of stars, which is 4 minus 2, 2, so we print 2 stars, generate 2 stars. Then we need to attach the number in the start and in the end, and in between there would be stars, so we do that. And then the last step, we have to print the whole line, which would start with the number, then stars, and then the number, and this will be printed multiple times. So we'll get something like this. In case of 4, it would be 4 double star 4, and then on the next time we'll also get 4 double star 4, because 4 minus 2, this would run 2 times. So this would be the output complete, and then we output the last line, and then the pattern is fully complete. So this is the whole idea. So this was again a not valid template question, because the students couldn't figure out what to do in this question and what were the patterns. So this is how you're supposed to quickly identify them, and then write as much code as possible. Partial code is also fine. Okay, so question number 6 is done. Then we move on to 7. So this is theory, I'm skipping it. Okay, last question for this paper is question number 8, and we will look at it and then we'll try to solve it. Okay, this question So this question has 3 parts, so let's start. So in the first part, they're saying the computer shop assembles computers using items bought from several suppliers. A text file stock.txt contains the information about each item. Information for each item is stored in a single line. Okay, and then this is the format. So we have item number, then it's followed by supplier and description. So item number is 4 numeric characters, supplier is 3 alphabetic characters, and description is a string. Okay, so now the comments are unique number for each item in range, then to identify the supplier, and a minimum of 12 characters. So as we read the question, we'll keep on identifying if you have to use any library routines, so definitely we'll use the length function here. And then they're checking for 0001 to 5999. This means this is obviously going to be a string. It's enclosed in quotation marks as well. Okay, the file is organized in ascending number of item number and does not contain all the possible values in the range. Alright, so that means that some of the values might not be used at all. All the item number might not be registered for now. So we have only alpha here, and then this is already written. It will be called with the parameter of type string. It will return true if the string contains only alphabetic characters, and will return false otherwise. Okay, so if we pass in any string, so let's say we pass in 0001, it should return us false, but if we pass in ABCD, it should return us true. So we'll assume that it is working and we don't have to write this because it's already written. So this is your helper function here. Then we have the check info. So check info is going to be called with the parameter of type string representing a line of the item, checks to see whether the line information is valid, returns true if it is valid, or false if it is not valid. Okay, so they're saying only alpha should be used. Alright, so how do we check if it is valid or not? So these are the main rulings here. Item number should be 4 numeric characters. Now you're given only alpha here, so if there are 4 characters and then 4 values must all be they must not contain any alphabets, right? So they are technically numeric characters, but they are enclosed as a string. So we'll use the only alpha here. If at any point there is any alphabetic character in it, so it should return false, which means that the item number is not valid. Similarly, supplier code will have 3 alphabetic characters, so we again have to use the len function here, and alphabetic characters again implies we must use only alpha here to make sure that we have the correct alphabets in it. And then lastly we have description, which is a string, and it should be a minimum of 12 characters. So if it is less than that, again that would return the false. So the rules are simple, so we just go ahead and write the solution. And please remember that you can also do the string comparison, so we can easily check if value is less than 0001 string, so 0001, or value is greater than 5999, and they are essentially converted into ASCII values and then they are compared. So string comparison is perfectly allowed and it is totally fine. So this would be question number 8. Okay, here we go. So in question number 8 now we have to figure out the rules. So the first and the most basic rule would be, so we'll have 4, 3 and 12. Okay, let's look at the minimum length. Okay, it should be 4, so 4, then 3 for the supplier code, and then the minimum of 12 characters. So 4 plus 3 plus 12 is a total of 19 characters. So if our string for any reason has less than 19 characters, then that means it is invalid, right? Okay, if that is not the case, then we can do the remaining checks. First, let's go ahead with this. So we have the module called check info, and since it has to return true or false, so it would be a function that will be returning type boolean. So function check info, then they said the parameter is supposed to be a string, so line as a string, and then we are returning a boolean, returns a boolean, and we do end function here. Okay, then we first of all check if the length is not as per the ruling. So if let's calculate the length of the line because we might need to use it again. So let's use a variable, let's call it LT maybe, so length of line, and we check if length of line is less than 19, then we will return false simply, and we do end like this. Then the question says, if that is not the case, we have to first make sure that the item number has 4 numeric characters, and then supplier code has 3 alphabetic characters, and then description is supposed to be a string. Okay, so there is another function in the insert document that we can use, and it is called where was it? Yes, this one, isNum. So isNum is going to take a valid numeric value, which would be a string, and then it will return true or false based on that. So if it is all a numeric value inside the string, it will return true, otherwise false. So if I write isNum, and if I say minus maybe 3.14, so it will again return a true, or if I just write 3, it will return true, but if I make it 3a, it will return false. So this can also be used in this case. Okay, so let's go ahead and first extract the first 4 numeric characters, and then we have to make sure that it is between 0001 to 5999. So this is fairly simple. We just have to use the left function. So it's the item number, so I'll call it item number. Item number is equal to left of line by the first 4 characters. So it will extract the first 4 characters, and for example we'll just write a value here, a dummy value here. Maybe we have 9294. It should be between 5999, so maybe 4562. Then I'm putting a comma just to show there is separation, or just a dash just to show a separation. It's not part of the original string. Supplier code must be of 3 alphabetic characters, so maybe CSP, word science maybe, and then description could be anything. So maybe we have a software for Windows. something like this. This should be the exact format. So first of all, we're extracting these 4 characters, and we have to make sure it's between 0001 and 5999. So how do we do this? We just check if item num is less than 000, it should be double quotation marks because it's a string, or item num is more than 5999. If that is the case, then we will simply return false, because that means that it cannot be a valid string. Again, like I told you, that we can actually use string comparison because this would be done eventually in ASCII values. Okay, that's fine. So now the next part is we have to figure out that the description must have 12 characters. So we've already done the length check. Okay, now we just have to do the check for the item number. Okay, for item number we have 4 numeric characters here, and we have to make sure that we're done with the numeric characters. We have the supply code. So numeric characters would be, yeah, we have to make sure that all of them are numeric. Okay, so in order to make sure all of them are numeric, we have to extract them one by one, and then we have to send them in this isNum function. So let's say if you have, so the ID that I used here is 4562. So what I have to do is I have to individually check, is 4 a number, is 5 a number, is 6 a number, is 2 a number. If all of them are true, then overall this is a numeric string, otherwise it is not. So let's say the item number I send is 862B. So it's a number, yes, it's a number, yes, it's a number, yes, it's not a number. So here it should return false, which means this is wrong. And again, you have to keep one thing in mind, that this is number will check for the whole string if it represents a valid numeric value. Okay, and since they're talking about 4 numeric characters here, and then every string, every character in here is a numeric character, so we have to actually apply it on every single character. And if none of them, or even if at least one of them is not a number, then that means it's going to be invalid. So we need to extract it one at a time. So we have to get one character at a time. Okay, so let's get one character at a time. So again, we have the first 4 characters. So let's run a loop for I1 to 4 because the length is fixed. Okay, now let's get the character out. So we'll use mid, we'll use line, we'll use I, and we'll use 1. So this will extract one character at a time. Okay, now you have one character here, so you need to check if the current character, so let's say we got 4 out, then we have to get 5 out, then we have to 6, then we have to get 2, and we have to apply isNum on all of them. Okay, so we have to make sure that every single character is actually containing some sort of a numeric value. So we check if character, so we pass in is num.
Can't we just use like isNum and check if all 4 are numbers?
Sorry, Dwara?
Can't we just use the...
Okay, so we have to check if the number is a valid 4 numeric character number. So we'll use the is number directly. So we'll write, let's say status is equal to isNum, and we'll pass in the item number. We have already extracted the 4 characters here. Okay, if it returns false, then that means that it contains some sort of an alphabet. So if status, or you can is equal to false, or you can just write if not status, then we return false, and then we end if. Okay, so here it is going to check if all characters are numeric values. Alright, perfect. And then we are left with one more thing. So we still haven't used only alpha. Okay, so we have to use that. Okay, and that must be used in the supply code. So supply code must be 3 alphabetic characters. And in order to do that, again we have to, so only alpha will be called on a parameter string, returns true if the string contains only alphabetic characters. Okay, so we can just apply only alpha here. So let's use reuse the status variable, so only alpha, and here we have to use the supply code. Let's call it supply code, and in order to get supply code, we'll use the mid function. So supply code is starting from after the first 4 characters, so it's starting at the 5th character, right? So from the 5th there would be 3 characters, because they've said in the format, so it would be supplier code would be line, then starting from the fifth character we'll get 3 characters. So we are extracting the supplier, the 3-digit or 3 character supplier code. So we do that and we apply only alpha on it. So only alpha will give us the result. It will make sure that the string that you pass in only contains alphabetical characters, and if that is true, so we will just check if status. Again, if not status, then we again return false, and if. And the reason we are not returning true is because if none of these return false would be triggered, then at the end it would obviously imply that we have to return true, because none of these were triggered. So since none of them returned any value, then it simply means that we will return true, and that's it. So a quick recap: we checked if the length is valid, then we extracted the first 4 characters of the item number, and we checked if it is not in the range. Then we checked if the item number has all numeric values. If it is not, then we return false. Then we extracted 3 characters for the supplier code. We checked if it is only alpha. By the way, only alpha is written wrongly. It should be only alpha like this, as written in the question. And then if the status is again false, so return false, and if none of them return false, then there is only one possibility that we return true. Perfect. Okay, so moving on to the last part of this paper, that is part B, add item called with the parameter of type string, and then it represents valid information for a new item that is currently not in the stock file. Okay, and then creates a new file, new stock, from the contents of the file and adds the new information at the appropriate place in the new stock file. Okay, so this is a bit tricky question. As a reminder, the file is organized in ascending order of item number and does not contain all possible values in the range. That means, so if we have a file and the item numbers are starting from 0001, so they're saying it's possible that some numbers might not exist at all. So called with the parameter, of type string representing valid information for a new item that is currently not in stock file. So we have to read the stock file, and then we have to check and then create a new file from the contents of the stock to add the new item at the appropriate place in the new stock.txt. Okay, let's try this now. So as always, first let's go ahead and write the parameter. So this is, we are returning a value or not, creates a new file. Okay, so we are not returning a value, so it should be a procedure, add item, then we have the line, and this should be a string, and then we have the end procedure. All right. Okay, so called with the parameter of type string representing valid information for a new item that is currently not in the stock.txt file. Okay, so let's make a dummy stock.txt file for our example. Stock.txt will have, let's say we have 4862, then it has CSP, and then computer software. Then maybe, so they're saying they are in ascending order, okay, but not all of them may be used. So maybe this is 0002, and then the next value could be 1003, something like this, and then this could be, let's say, physics, and then this could be a physics software, and then we could have 2050, and this could be math, and then this could be a math software, so on and so forth. So there would be multiple lines, but again this would be in ascending order of the item number, and like they said that some item numbers may not exist at all. So what is the question saying now? Now what we have to do here is that we need to read the line. We get a line for a new item that is not currently in the stock file. So according to the parameter of type string representing valid information for a new item that is not in the stock file. So let's say I have the new data now. So the new data is something like this. It could be 1000, and then it could be maybe bio and a bio software maybe. So now what we have to do is, the question is saying that we have to create a new stock file from the contents of the file of the stock and add the new information at the appropriate place. Okay, so there's going to be a new file, so new stock.txt. Again, it is always very helpful if you actually visualize these questions, otherwise you can not solve them properly. So what the question is saying, that you will be copying all the data in a new file with the new line that we have to place in the file. Okay, so we read the first line and we see, we copy it and we paste it as it is in the new text file, and then at the same time we have to keep some sort of a track that we are doing it in the ascending order of item number. So now bio is the correct place of bio is here after computer science, then physics is 1003, it goes afterwards, and then since 2050 is after 1003, so it goes after this, and then this is how the new file should look like, and then there could be other lines. So this is the idea of the program. So again, what we have to do is we have to copy the contents of the stock file and we have to put them in the new stock file, and at the same time we need to also add the new line that we get in this procedure, add item, but it should also go in the appropriate place of the file according to the item number. Now in order to do this, there could be many approaches, but the most simple one would be that we can make an array of this many possible lines. So the total number of lines here could be, let's see if they have told us, I don't think they have told us anywhere. A text file contains information about each item. It's stored like this. Okay, yes, we do have information. The item number is till 6000, from 1 to 6000. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will use the array range. Again, what we have to do, we have the file, existing file, we have to copy the contents of the existing file, we have to place them in the new file, and along the way we also have to figure out a way how to add the new line into the new file, but in the appropriate place as per the ascending order of the item number. Okay, so for this we will create an array, and the idea would be that there would be one array corresponding to all of these values. So let's say I have this array here, and then there would be values stored corresponding here. So maybe this will go all the way till 6000, and on the first line this would be, so I'll get the item number, I'll read the item number, convert it into an integer, and just store all the data at that specific index. So it's index 2 0002, so I'll go to index 2 here, and I'll just go ahead and put all the data on index 2 like this. Then I'll go to 1003, since there's no other line in between, so I'll literally go to index 1003 and I'll go ahead and I'll put the values there, and all the remaining indices would be empty. So this would just give me a very simple method to actually go ahead and put the value in the right spot. So I'll just compare the current value with the current index, and if it is less than that, so I won't place the value. So let's say if I have 1000 here right now, and if the current pointer is at 2, so 2 is clearly less than 1000, so I'll keep on moving until I find 1000 and I put it in the right place, and then that's it. Now if the logic is clear, we can go ahead and implement it. So I'm leaving space for declarations, we'll do it at the end. So first of all, we have to initialize this array. This has 6000 elements, so I'll say for I 1 to 6000. Is it 6000 though? 1 to 5999. Okay, it's not 6000, it's 5999. So eventually it goes all the way till 5999. Okay, so then let's call the array maybe data. Let's call it data. So in the data array's current index, we are going to initialize it all to empty strings. That is how we will denote that some of these values are unused. Okay, so 1 is unused, 3 is unused, 4 is unused, 5 is unused, etc. Okay, now then in the next part, what we have to do here is, so I'll clear this. Now what we have to do here is that we have to get the item number, one item number, and we are going to reconvert this into an integer, and then I'm going to go and put it into the current index of my array, whatever the index is, and then I have to do the further processing. So I'll say, let's say this would be my current index, so index would be left of the line by 4. So again, why am I doing it by 4? Because item number are the first 4 characters. So I'll extract it, and this would give me some sort of an index number like 0002, 1003, 2050, but again this is in string, so I need to convert this So let's call it, in fact, let's call it I. And then index would be, or we can just do it directly. So let's call it index, and then I'll just say that data current index, since it's in string, so I need to convert this into string to num. You can do it separately in another variable, or you can do it in the same line. So we go to the current index, and then we go ahead and we put the line there, so like this. So this would be next j. Yeah, so we are going to process it for the 5999 values. So now what we have to do here is, we are not going to write the empty lines into the new stock file. Okay, so new stock file should look like this. It should have the line that is in the new stock file, and then it should have the appropriate new data in the correct position, and then no empty lines here, because let's assume there are a lot of empty lines. So empty lines are represented by an empty string, so we just ignore those. So when we are writing them, we just can ignore that. So we'll say if the value, or let's get the current, let's get the data out. So current is data index j, we get this, and we check if current is not equal to empty. So only then we are going to write this into the new stock file, right? So if I go ahead and if I read index 1, it's empty, so I'm not going to write this. But if I go at index 2, it's not empty, so I'll go ahead and write this. So I'll say write file. This would be into the new stock file, which is newst, comma, and we'll just write the current in there like this, and then we do endif, and then I think that's pretty much it. Yep, that's it. So we close the for loop, and then we close both the files, and that's it. So quick recap, we went through we created a new array, we set it all to empty, then we added the new line into the array by extracting the index, then we opened the file, we read through all the lines in the stock file like this, and then we placed them into the new array that we created, the data array. And then once we had done that, then we went ahead and we wrote our array into the new stock file, in which the new data is already in place. So I opened the file, I checked if it is not empty, then I write the line into the new file, and then I close the files, and then the procedure ends. That's the whole idea, right? So this was an interesting question. So question 7 is, again, this was attempted by virtually all candidates as full mark. Okay, not this one. We did question number 8. Yes. So question number 8, an exercise in string manipulation did not contain any viable solution, only alpha where. So ये हमने discuss कर लिया था. Very few viable answers seen. Many candidates did not answer this question. Opening file in the wrong mode. Attempting a condition loop until UF file for the file that is open in write mode, right? Because it's open in write mode, उसमें भी कोई data नहीं होगा, it will overwrite all the data existing. Failing to enclose file names in quotation marks to indicate their strings. Use of end of file without a parameter, and then yeah. So again,
Sir, how close are we to finishing the entire pseudocode chapter, being done with once and for all?
The part C, let's quickly look at it. So they're saying the program contains another module. So these have been done. Okay, so this is a theoretical one. I'm skipping this. Okay, with this the paper is done. So that is all. This was May June 2023, paper 2-2.